Hello, welcome to another episode of the Business of Higher Ed podcast, where we explore issues surrounding the business of post-secondary education. Today, we're addressing international education, really, but we're doing it through the lens of St. George's University, an extremely interesting school in Grenada that has grown its school around the idea of international education, international student recruitment, focused on very specific niches where they have found certain gaps. So we're going to be talking about that. And to help us through that discussion, I'm really pleased to welcome John McLoughlin. He is the Executive Director of Enrollment Partnerships and Programs at St. George's University. This man has 20 plus years experience working in higher education, in international higher education, and in healthcare education. So he knows the lay of the land domestically. He's based in the United States, but in Canada, in the United States, and throughout the world. John, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast, and really looking forward to hearing your thoughts.
Yes, thank you, David, for having me and inviting me to the podcast. I'm really excited about today's conversation.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about St. George's University in a snapshot?
Sure. So St. George's, which we like to call as SGU, is an international health sciences university. We are in Grenada, West Indies, in the Caribbean. But we are a university that is primarily made up of U.S. students, of Canadian students, and students globally, representing about 140 countries around the world on our campus. We were founded about 50 years ago. And in that short period of time, we've educated over 22,000 graduates who are physicians, many and most primarily in the U.S. Healthcare system. We've had over 2,200 Canadian graduates, and many who've returned back to Canada to serve as physicians there. We are bachelor's to PhD. We have a medical and veterinary medicine school. And we're part of the solution for addressing the physician shortage and healthcare needs globally. Most of our students are students who have had a passion for becoming a physician and may have just missed a seat in a U.S. or Canadian medical school, or seeking an opportunity to become a doctor in North America. And so there's a really common thread across our students who are committed to caring for others. And so we're very passionate about our mission and the work that we do. We have about 5,000 students across all of our programs. And we are the largest provider of doctors into the U.S. healthcare system. And for the last 11 years, we've been the largest provider of physicians into first-year medical residencies. So we're making an impact. And it's been, for the last 5 years I've been here at SGU, it's really been a joy and a privilege to be part of this community.
International education, I read the mission statement of your university. It is baked right into that mission statement, international education. As an institution that is very heavily reliant, well, entirely reliant, I would assume functionally, really, on international students and international education. Can you provide some ideas about, yes, there's opportunities. What are the priorities that you have to be focused on? What are some of the challenges and some of the solutions that St. George's or SGU, does to try to ensure that the students are best positioned for success?
Sure. So I think our story, which starts with our Chancellor, Charlie Modica, who founded SGU, is one that's very mission focused and very mission specific. We don't try to be everything to everyone. We know who we are, and we are a health sciences university, and we have a a very robust medical school. And so our mission is very focused on the addressing this global healthcare shortage. And so our international footprint, what brings us together across all different countries, across all corners of the world, is this commitment to addressing the physician shortage. And I'll just give some examples for your viewers and your listeners. In Canada, there is an acute shortage of physicians,
Yeah.
44,000 plus shortage going into 2028. In the US, that's about 84,000 physician shortage going to 2036. There are about 6 million Canadian adults who do not have access to family medicine doctor, right? In the US, we have medical deserts across our country, millions of citizens who do not have access to primary care.
Mhm.
And so you have an aging population across North America and across many countries. In Germany, for example, a couple of years ago, they fast-tracked foreign medical doctors because they needed doctors drastically to address their healthcare needs. And you combine that with limited seats in medical school.
Yeah.
In Canada, 15,000 students apply every year for 3,000 seats.
Yeah.
In the US, there are almost 30,000 students annually who are not accepted to US medical schools. Students who would qualify but are not getting a seat.
Okay. All right.
So, you could probably start to see the value proposition of an SGU, right, and addressing these needs. But this is not just North America. This is globally. You have hundreds of thousands of students in India not getting into their program into medical school directly from high school. You have, as we talk about medical deserts, areas in continents, in countries across Africa that don't have certain specific specialties and are not able to address very acute healthcare issues. And so way that we address and the way that we approach international education is very much through the lens of there's this common thread of a gap in healthcare. And we're going to address the global healthcare needs. And we've been doing that for 50 years. And so everything that we do, all parts of our enterprise, our business, are focused on creating more opportunities for students to become physicians, becoming veterinarians, addressing healthcare needs, addressing public healthcare concerns, which have grown since the pandemic. And that informs our recruitment, that informs our support structure for students, that informs the partnerships that we develop. Everything is getting through that prism and that lens of addressing the sort of healthcare gap. And again, we have so many opportunities as a large enterprise to think about all different types of education. We always remain focused on health.
There's a Canadian piece to SGU. Without getting into the details, there's been financing that have been undertaken by private equity and by financing companies, one of which was led by a Canadian, Altus Partners. And what I found very interesting, and what ties into what you just said, is that the investment thesis of Altus, and I'm just looking at here, business is hard to replicate, possesses clear natural advantages, high quality market leading institutions that 10 years from now will be just as important, just as relevant, and as profitable. And then a quote that there is no risk of obsolescence. So that was part of the press release when Altus and Baring Private Equity Asia completed a round of financing, I believe, an acquisition of SGU, and I think that very interestingly speaks from a very business perspective to what you're talking about from an academic and a training and a global healthcare perspective. And that just really caught me. There's no risk of obsolescence. So that's
growing
No,
need for physicians, an aging population, an aging physician workforce, right?
that,
And we all need doctors.
mhm,
And so this is for us. This has been a really exciting time for growth across the globe.
mhm,
And I think one of the things that we are seeing is, um, and this started during the pandemic, is just a stronger interest in medicine and students seeing themselves as physicians.
mhm.
And the pandemic really brought about, I think, a new way of thinking for many people around what we need to do to address public health concerns. Many governments across the globe are addressing public health infrastructures and their medical infrastructure. And so, yeah, we're very fortunate to have some investor funding that has allowed us to escalate and accelerate our mission, which has been really exciting to be part of for the past few years.
In Canada, I see St. George presence and recruiting, and if I can call it advertising, um, in a lot of different places. I see a lot of partnerships, particularly recently. I've seen in the news a bunch of partnerships with different types of schools too. That's the thing. Not just this university, but also with some private institutions. What is the strategy? What is for recruiting and enrolling for a school like SGU?
Well, first is we really take time to understand who our students are, and SGU is a school that is very global in nature. We have students that are representative of, as I said earlier, around 140 countries. About 75% of our students are U.S. citizens. About 10% are Canadian, and we have significant populations of students from India and from East Asia, from Africa and the Middle East, and so understanding who our students are and where they're coming from. We have students who are traditional students coming directly out of university. And we have students who are career changers, right? Average age
Mm.
27, right? Who may be in other areas of healthcare, military service, other careers
Uh,
completely, but have always wanted to become a doctor and see this as an opportunity and pathway. We have students who are, and for many of our international students, they're coming to us through our preclinical or pre-med program and starting with us for 2 or 3 years and gaining an understanding of the sciences and achieving a bachelor's degree prior to entering into our medical school. And so we understand the student persona and really tailor our recruitment to each of those audiences. And in Canada in particular, what we have found is that partnerships, and this is across North America, but partnerships has been very valuable. Some of our top feeders are, McMaster and U of T and McGill. It's common because of just the sheer volume and numbers of students interested in medicine not getting seats in medical school in Canada, that we're going to see students from those schools. But we also seek then opportunities to partner with schools that we can direct more intentional pathways. Wilfrid Laurier,
mm,
Trent University, Ontario Tech, University of Fraser Valley, where we can support students during their undergraduate years and build a pathway for students into our medical school. And that includes introducing them early to what they're going to be learning in medical school, how they learn, because learning as an undergraduate student is very different than learning from medical school, just the intensity and the volume of information and knowledge, introducing them to mentoring, connecting them with our current students and graduates so they begin to really understand what it means to be a medical student and physician. So we begin
mhm.
that very early, and that's a nurturing of students that I think has been very important to the way that we support and then recruit students into the medical school. But we also look at partnerships with schools like Seneca Polytechnic and George Brown, where those are students who can start with us after they achieve a diploma or a degree into our preclinical program. And so those pathways are both good for the partner institution because they're attracting students into their institution who are intentionally thinking about medical school. And it's good for SGU because we are developing a relationship with that university and can have a sort of a mutual exchange of ideas, of ways to improve our instruction of students, ways that we can prepare students better for entrance into medical school. And so it's becoming a very important part of our strategy and approach. and we have a great team in Canada that helps to implement it every single day. And we do all the typical things like fairs and events and activities, but the partnerships are really a cornerstone of what we do. And we do it in North America. We have a partnership strategy overseas as well. For the last 12 years, we've had a robust partnership with Northumbria University in the UK, where students can actually do part of their education in the UK, part of their medical school education in the UK. So a lot of our Canadian students take advantage of that and will do a year of medical school in the UK and then spend a year with us in Grenada, and then return back and do all of their clinical rotations in the US and in Canada. So it really gives students an opportunity to learn about different healthcare systems, to have exposure to different educational systems, and ultimately make them better prepared with cultural competencies and knowledge and skills to be successful as physicians.
The pathways, I think are important for SGU, but I think pathways are becoming or have been and are becoming even more so important for many post-secondary institutions, partnerships as well. And so I was seeing you have an SGU Global Medic Club online learning platform. So that is, I assume, part of this opportunity for a student at a Canadian university, for example, who is looking to move, thinking of moving, trying to get into medicine, to access some of the resources through SGU?
Yes. The platform really is a community. It's building a community of pre-med students who have access to modules, learning information that they can access to learn more about medical school and medical education. I think the value of partnerships is about building community. We're this dynamic landscape of higher ed, lots of changes taking place, and whether it's public-private partnerships with industry, many of our affiliations in the United States in particular are universities that are also located near our clinical sites, right? New York, we have many robust partnerships, but also New York is a place where we have many clinical affiliations. We're the only international medical school affiliated with the largest public healthcare system in the United States, New York City Health and Hospitals. That creates a continuity. Imagine starting your education in a New York university, then going to SGU, and then coming back to clinical rotations, and then working in a hospital in New York. And that's a model that we're looking to continue to replicate across North America. And it's those linkages and those partnerships that are great for students. They're good for business. And it constantly informs, right? Part of accreditation also is, what industry knowledge are you getting, between our clinical faculty and working closely with hospitals in a particular region. That's continuing to inform our curriculum. It's continuing to inform how our current students are learning, so they're best prepared when they're in the hospitals and in the health centers with patients. So it's good all around, right? But this is the future of higher ed. It is now. Partnerships really can help lift up an organization, raise the profile, differentiate it. Students want to know from day one, whether it's undergraduate, graduate, professional school education, how does this help me be more competitive for my career?
But the other thing that is you're creating multiple entry points, and you are, through those pathways, through those partnerships, creating multiple entry points, but you're also creating multiple entry points for the various student segments. So we're not, we may tend to focus on the 18 to 25-year-old, okay, traditional university college student, but the world is changing, second careers. So I think those pathways and partnerships, they must be really helpful in accessing.
They are. I mean, they're an enrollment driver, but they're built on our mission, which is when you look at the demographics of SGU and who we are, maybe in part a post-traditional student population, more diverse than any traditional medical school in the US or Canada. Many first-generation university and medical students, right? Not necessarily a student whose mom and dad was a physician or came from a family of physicians. Maybe a student who is traditionally marginalized or underrepresented in education. The fact that There is a pathway, foreign medical doctors, right? International students who want to become
Yeah.
doctors in North America and address the physician shortage here. This is just not the common makeup of a Canadian or US medical school. And that's nothing to say about them. They're designed for their students in their region, in their backyard, in their state, in their province. SGU and many international medical schools, right? Our mission is focused on this ability to bring students who again, we know who our students are, right? They may have just missed a seat in a medical school. They want to become a doctor in North America and create these pathways. And so all these various pathways and entry points are built on our mission of knowing who our students are and how can we best support them to get them to do ultimately what they want to do and what our mission is, which is get them to become doctors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The other point in terms of what you were talking about is the affiliations. And so I don't think this is sort of a secret. SGU invests heavily in creating these affiliations to ensure students who have achieved have a place when they come back, or have options when they come back. I'll say to the United States, but I'm sure it's other countries too. So that is also part of it. It's a different way of thinking about medical education, I think. I'm not a doctor, but that idea that, what, we're going to take this extra step and do this different approach to try to increase your odds of ensuring that you're going to get a quality, whatever it is, clinical rotation in a place that you want to get it.
100%. So, when we talk about like what differentiates SGU, academically, it is the quality of our curriculum, but also the support services we provide students. But when you look at this, there are 60 medical schools in the Caribbean.
Well, that's what I was going to get to next.
Well, yeah, what's really interesting is none of them have the vast clinical network that we have in the U.S., to the growing network in Canada and in the UK, where we have some students who will go back there and become licensed physicians. But we have over 80 clinical affiliations now. And in the US, we'll take the US, for example, where we have them across about 13, 14 states. Again, these are very intentional relationships to address physician shortage in particular areas, but also it's a mutual arrangement. It's a business arrangement. It guarantees our students know that they have a slot. And that's why they're coming to us, right? They're not coming to SGU because we're in Grenada. They're coming to SGU because they're going to get clinical rotations and be competitive for matching in residency, right? And so giving students the options of an 80+ network, access to program directors that will get to know them. It's like an audition for 2 years, right? That you're getting letters of recommendations. You're having opportunity to do research with faculty at the medical at these hospitals. This is all positioned to allow our students is all done to position our students to be much more competitive, and that's why we have match rates of 94%. That's why our students are doing on par with U.S. medical schools for USMLE and medical licensing exams. It's because of this very sort of intentional approach to how we forge these relationships with our clinical partners. And on top of that, it's not just we're signing a business arrangement and with these clinical partners. Then we're embedding their physicians to be our faculty, so that our students have that support, that continuity after they spend a year in Northumbria at UK or a year in Grenada. Now they're still with SGU faculty in these hospitals. So that SGU culture community continues even beyond their time in the seats in Grenada.
You've talked very directly about your typical student, or what they have been through. So that this may not have been their first choice, right? But here's the thing that I find really interesting. You celebrate that. You celebrate that, no, we're not like this. I was reading about a medical student or prospective medical student that was interviewing And one of the questions at SGU was, so how are you going to deal with people saying to you, you're from a Caribbean or medical school, and that's not as good. And that was actually a question that the interviewer was asking, and the student replied with what I assume many of your students would say, which is a bit of a chip on the shoulder, and say, well, I'm going to do what they do, and I'm going to do it better. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
and
I
so
love
is there?
that's a great story. Yeah, I describe our students as having this unwavering resilience, this grit. Many of our students have had upfront sort of experience either with family members that have held healthcare issues. They've had academic or health or physical challenges. They are excellent students, high GPAs. In the U.S., competitive MCAT scores, but just miss a seat in a U.S. medical school. In Canada, again, it's just a numbers game, right? It's 15,000 applications for 3,000 seats. You have exceptional students coming out of Canada who are coming to SGU. Currently, we have over 600 Canadians at SGU. And these are some of our absolutely strongest students, right? International students who can't get into a U.S. or Canadian medical school. We have as many international students at SGU as all Canadian U.S. medical schools combined, right? So we know who our students are. We say to a student, if you get accepted to U.S. Canadian medical schools, go there. We know that it may be a little bit easier. It may be something that is, for you at this moment, the right thing for you. But SGU is the right place for students who want to become doctors, who are qualified to become doctors, who are passionate, and want to have this great opportunity to have a global education and then be part of our great clinical network and be in residency and become physicians. And because of our respect and reputation, right? I always say the great equalizer is at the end of the day, you're taking the medical license exam alongside U.S. and Canadian medical students, right? You're going to match into the national match in the U.S. or for some Canadians, the Canadian match they compete in, along with all those who have graduated from medical schools here in North America. And our curriculum, our 50 years of data, the way that we support students on their journey to residency is what allows them to be competitive. So yes, we know who our students are. We've designed our curriculum and our support structure around students and what they need to be successful. If you go to a Canadian U.S. medical school, typically you're not going to have those same support services. You have students who may have come in all with excellent standardized scores, very high GPAs.
Yeah.
We know that some of our students may need more support around standardized exams. Going to become a doctor is also about board exams and licensing exams, and it's essential that they are aware of and how to become comfortable and prepared for exams. I mentioned earlier, we teach them how to learn. We help them adjust their learning style. Every student is assigned a learning strategist who is early on helping them learn about their learning style and how they adapt it to be successful in medical school. We have a Department of Educational Services, which has as many faculty members, MD, PhD, and equivalent as our medical school, who are working closely with our students on everything from time management, test-taking skills. We have early alert systems to address students early on who may be having challenges in their learning and in their testing, and help support them to make sure that they're successful. So again, it's a very intentional. We know who our students are, and then we build a support structure around that. And we are able to do that, right? Our campus is, I think most people are surprised. We're about 46, I think 65 buildings, 46 acre campus. This rivals many North American universities. And we have the comprehensive support services to support that. And then on top of that, what we do is we divide our medical school into multiple colleges, which allow us to keep our classes small. So our average class size is an 8-to-1 ratio, eight students to one teacher. And about 75% of our classes are in that smaller model, not lecture style. We have lecture style as well, but the core of what we do is about creating a smaller environment within this comprehensive university. So most of our colleges are in that 100 student range where they are assigned learning strategists, there's associate deans, there's advisors, faculty who know them, who are aware of their students, know them by name. And those are the relationships that are really helpful. And that's how we build, and what's how we scale, but that's how we build success early on, is through this model. And it's not only a distinguishing factor for SGU, but it's a core how we are able to be successful with our students.
So you're saying that SGU has made deliberate attempts to transition to much smaller, much more personalized classroom and support services.
Yeah.
Okay.
So exactly. So this comprehensive larger university benefits students. They have the resources they need, whether it's on campus, off campus, right? The fact that we have a large clinical network, those are things that a smaller medical school cannot do. They cannot be that competitive. We can do that because we have the ability to scale. But the college model gives us the opportunity to have that personal one-on-one service. SGU has never lost that from our first class that came in 1976 to now. It is very much about knowing our students. It's about providing support services. And so the students benefit from having that comprehensive university, but very intentional, smaller experiences. We call study groups or small group learning. Again, this is very intentional about the way that we provide our curriculum to students. And again, it's one of the reasons why our students are graduating and passing the USMLE over 90% and matching around 94%. What I always tell people when you're looking at international medical schools, any medical school, but particularly international medical schools, is as important as the USMLE and the match rate is that graduation rate. Because often medical schools in the Caribbean that are not as strong will say, oh, we have a 95% pass rate, right? Or match rate or pass rate on USMLE. But their graduating class is 50% or 40%. And it's that percentage of that smaller number. And so SGU has a graduation rate that's on par with US medical schools. We're around 85, 86%. US medical schools are about 88%. And so again, out of that, we have a 95%. So we're graduating students and they are going on to careers as physicians. And then we also make an additional commitment to students for those students. And there are students, right? They may not pass an exam the first time, the medical exam. They may not match the first time, that small number that do not. We offer additional resources and services, opportunities to do research, opportunities to pursue a master's in public health, other ways that we provide services to students so that the next match, they can be more competitive. They're not hanging out on their own. It's not, we count success when a student becomes a physician, right? You don't go to medical school to become a medical student. Your goal is to become a doctor. We want to address the physician shortage. So we're in this together. And so that commitment is good business. And it makes us stand out as the primary international medical school in the industry.
What are some of the demands that you might say, the unique demands that students have to be aware of if they're, because your student, as you've said, your students.
Yeah.
And going to Grenada, from wherever it is.
Sure.
What are some challenges that students need to be prepared for, and what kind of support is there? But
yeah, so this is a stretch moment for many students in that they're getting out of their comfort zone. Some students have done a lot of traveling, and many others have not. Some have not left their home communities.
right.
Have some limited experience outside of the country. And so it's not just getting ready for medical school, right? It's preparing for a shift in maybe a culture shift, being away from family and friends. And so there is an adjustment, and we recognize that. And it's not just a comfort zone issue. Many of our students are prepared to do that, but it's family, right? Parents,
Yep.
Siblings, spouses.
Yes.
We do have families that come down, spouses, children, and there are accommodations for them. But for many of our students, right, this is a big step. Now, what we try to share is that this is manageable, and many of our current students speak to this, right? This is, you're not down in Grenada for 2 years, right? It's semester based. 14, 15 weeks go very quickly in medical school. You're able to go back home. You're able to travel. There's an intensity. You're in a beautiful Caribbean island, and you have a beach on campus. That's great. But you're not going to spend a lot of time on it, right?
I was going to say, in medical school, I wouldn't think you'd be spending a lot of time on that beach.
No. So you're in the classroom learning. But what we do try to work with our students on, we have everything from health and psychological services. We have student clubs and sports and activities, because one is that balance is important, and it is necessary for them to learn those skills to deal with stress as medical students so they can be successful physicians. So that is something that we spend a lot of time on with our students. We believe in leadership, and leadership is developed by building community. And so many of our students are involved with different types of organizations. We along with our vet school, do health fairs for Grenadian citizens. We're very connected to the country. We're 25% of their GDP. So as a university, so we're very connected and tied. Grenada is a small country, about 100,000 plus people. So SGU has a very strong presence in that country, and our students, after they graduate, often come back vacation. But more than that, I mean, just this past year, we had something like, I think, 200 plus surgeries that were done at no cost by our alumni in very necessary specialties that are not always accessible in Grenada. We have a significant amount of resources that go into charity and support for different Grenadian causes. So our students are really invested in the community and the country that they're in for that period of time. But you're right, it is an adjustment. That is one part of it. The other part, and particularly I think for Canadians, right, you're going to school, you're growing up in Canada, and you think, I'm going to come back as a doctor in Canada. And some of our most successful physicians from Canada are actually starting their journey in a medical residency in the US. One is because there's many more opportunities, and two is they often can get in a specialty that they want. And the US and Canada have reciprocity.
Right.
So sometimes it's, you're growing up a certain way, or you hear about medical school and you're thinking about your journey, and it's going to a Canadian medical school. I'm doing clinicals in Canada, and I'm doing residency and having my career in Canada. And I think some of our most successful Canadian students adjust that thinking and realize I can go to the US. Some will stay in the US. Others will do reciprocity, where after they finish their medical residency in the US, they'll return back to Canada. And that is, I think, for our students, the ability to sort of shift their thinking a bit so that they can create more opportunities for themselves. That has been really those ways that we can continue to educate students to think, how do you feel more comfortable with this? How do you educate? The other thing we have done is we have a CSGU program where when a student is accepted at SGU, we invite them down for a complimentary visit. We want them to make sure this is the right fit, right? And so they come down for 3 days, they sit in on classes, they take a tour of campus, they take a tour of the facilities, they meet with current students, and they get a real sense of who we are and is this the right fit. And we do this also with many of our partners and with feeder schools throughout North America. We often do this. We bring groups of advisors down so they can better educate their students about SGU from personal experience.
This is a system that was designed and has been continually designed and evolved for a very specific sort of mission, a very specific purpose, which I think maybe some schools, because every school has to be international. It's not an option anymore, certainly in Canada, the United States, and we are. But how, and I'm going to step back from the medical piece for a minute, how you create that international program, how you define that international program, how you support that international program is as important, if not more important, than actually the academic program.
I say, our students have an opportunity to work with standardized patients in Grenada. They are doing clinical rotations in various potential U.S. hospitals across different cities, U.S., Canada, maybe even spend 12 weeks doing a clinical experience in the U.K. They're going to come out with exceptional knowledge, cultural competency that positions them to be some of the most competitive physicians. But I remove my cap from SGU for a moment and go back to my early years in international education when I was thinking about how to serve our students and how we grow as an organization. It was always about making sure that we were building partnerships and international relationships that were core to our mission. For many schools, and particularly in Canada, looking at those those partnerships that are within your wheelhouse that allow you to extend what you're known for is something that could be incredibly valuable.
Well, and I think, quite frankly, I think the partnership, even if it's not within your wheelhouse, but you can build a partnership that allows a student who's come to a school thinking they're going to do study ABC, and how frequent is it that the student says, I don't want to do that anymore. I think I want to do this. So does that student leave that school? Does that student go somewhere else? Are there opportunities in that school for what they want to do? So it is not only within your wheelhouse, but I think it can extend the wheelhouse in a way into areas that help with retention. I think help with student satisfaction, probably alumni satisfaction, connections on ramps and all that.
Sure. Yeah. I think SGU strength really comes down to our people, our leadership, those of us who are on the front lines, whether teaching a class, recruiting students, our alumni, and that strength comes from just a diversity of experiences and knowledge, right? If you really want to have an international organization, it's critical to have people who have different experiences and can educate the community about those experiences. And the admissions, and I'll take the admissions work that we do. We have a North American-based team, U.S., Canada. We have international teams, regional directors and managers in about 9 or 10 countries. We couldn't grow in certain areas and regions without having that local knowledge, right? We have great vision, great leadership. We know how to operationalize, but having that experience and knowledge in country, having an understanding of government relations, healthcare structures and systems, that's all critical to our growth. And I think any organization benefits from diverse experiences, diverse knowledge and opinion. The idea of constantly thinking about how can we do it better is really critical. And I think going back to the point throughout a lot of this conversations, I think leadership is very much about trying to find the right partners to be successful together. And whether it's industry partners, educational partners, this future of higher ed is really about how we integrate this so that our students do better, and that as organizations we are better positioned to be financially viable and successful. Even within a organization, if students see our org charts and hierarchy, it's a problem, right? Students need to be able to see it as seamless. And so whether it's across organizations, multinational, it's really essential that students feel the experience. The other thing I will say is meet students where they are, right? We are constantly challenging ourselves with new technology, with self-service features. I'm a big fan of exploring more about how AI is going to be impactful to higher ed and to the work that we do in enrollment management and admissions. How do we ensure that our connections with students is more transformational and to leave those transactional experiences to that 24/7 on demand when the student wants it, right? And that, I think, goes to many areas, right? It's not just about, how you pay your bill and how you register for classes. It's how you engage with learning, how we scale our education model. So I think we're in the people business. Let's serve our students well, and let's constantly think about how we innovate around technology to support our students. 5 years ago, or prior to COVID, if you asked me that, some of the work that we do around simulations now, you can do all virtually, and actually allows the student to have a better, lens into an organ than if they actually did a dissection, right? We didn't believe that, but that's become much more acceptable practice now, right? A VR technology in healthcare. I mean, this is an exciting time, and we as educators need to be in the forefront, the trendsetters in these areas, and not following other industries. And we tend to do that. And so, I'm excited that we're an organization that is trend setting. And I think if I was going to give any advice, keep focused on your students and keep focused on constantly how to serve them better.
But, SGU is clearly doing very well. And I think a big part of that has just been knowing itself and spotting, whether we want to call it business or not, spotting gaps in the market and the demand. So thank you very much for your generosity of time and expertise, and for answering our questions. And hopefully we can stay connected with you and learn more as SGU continues to grow. For those of you, our audience who enjoys this type of programming, please subscribe, comment, like. If you have ideas for different topics, please put them in below. John's bio and a link to SGU will be in the comment section below. So to everyone, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this, and have a lovely day.